Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons. My guest today is Dr. G.J. Farmer, and we're going to talk about simple prayers, big impact, how to pray effectively, among other things. G.J., thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. I want to say appreciate your leadership at the KBC and your friendship over the years. It's meant a lot to me.
Thanks, G.J. I'm grateful for you. So let me tell you about G.J. G.J. Farmer is the senior pastor at Beacon Hill Baptist Church in Somerset, Kentucky. He holds a bachelor degree from Clear Creek, a master's from Dallas Baptist, an MDiv from New Orleans, and a DMin, as well as a Master of Theology from Midwestern Baptist Seminary. G.J. has written a book, Teach Us to Pray, Discovering God's Heart Through Jesus Model Prayer. He's married to Hillary, and they have 5 children. And the Lord is using GJ. They're doing all kinds of ministry. You may have noticed a Kentucky Today article recently about prison baptisms that are happening through their church. And so if we get an opportunity, we'll talk more about that as well. So GJ, I want to talk about ministry transitions. I think those are hard for pastors, trying to discern when you're at a good church, which you were at, when God might be leading you to be open to a transition. Can you talk about how you ended up at Beacon Hill? But in that, tell us about that challenge, struggle, process of the transition.
Yeah. So I was at Scottsville Baptist for about 5.5 years, and probably, I guess, a year or so, a little over a year before I landed here at Beacon Hill, I just kind of felt God nudging me in a lot of ways that my time there was wrapping up, and really kind of that started where kind of the vision for what I saw ministry moving ahead and things that God was making me passionate about. I just really felt like God was leading me kind of in a different direction than maybe how the church was feeling at that time, and so I was really kind of praying through that, but I didn't want to make a quick decision on anything. I wanted to make sure the Lord was in it, of course. And so it was kind of funny. Somebody approached me about talking to Beacon Hill really a year before I even agreed to. And I had said no because I'd been here to Somerset a couple of times. I served at First Baptist Somerset for a few years as children's pastor, associate pastor. And I just thought, the world's a big place. Surely God would have somewhere else for me other than Somerset. It's not like that.
Yeah.
Not like I didn't like Somerset. I just thought I was like, just kind of going to what's comfortable if I agreed to that. And so I started sending my resume out a few different places, and just through that process, saw different opportunities for different reasons, kind of doors closed on those things from different perspectives and different things through the interview process. But then almost a year to the day, God brought back around this discussion about Beacon Hill, and ended up sending him my resume, and God worked it out through that whole process. But kind of in just experiencing that, it it was almost like I wanted to be sure that God was in it. And so when I first started sending out my resume, I sent it to places that I just knew like it's not going to work out for me, there, because honestly, I didn't really know that I was ready to go at that time. Just, I liked it there and everything. And just as time went on, God kept reassuring me through different conversations and even in my own spirit and things that it was time. So I don't know if that answered your question fully,
Yeah, I think
but
so.
be
I
glad
think
to
I think it's
dig
a
into
struggle
it
for
more.
pastors to try and figure out, okay, do I need to stay put here? Do I need to be open to God's leadership? Do I need to actually send out resumes, which is something that you did? I mean, we believe in the sovereignty of God. God can direct through any of those means or others as well. Beacon Hill seems to be doing really well right now. You feel like it looks like you have a good, healthy staff. Church attendance is increasing. One of the things I know that you have done is you've done some prison ministry where you've seen some folks saved and baptized. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's been really amazing. So to be honest, I had never been involved in anything like that in the past. And after I moved back to Somerset, the jailer here at the time, his son, or the jailer here now, his son, when I was here before, I was his children's pastor. And so he and I had kind of connected in that way. Well, we crossed paths at a meeting. I think it was like something to do with some sort of economic advisory committee that I was on here in the community. And he asked if I might be interested in doing some chaplain work out there. And so we kind of set that up, and then that evolved into now we have a ladies' Bible study in the day on Tuesdays and a men's Bible study in the day on Thursdays. Now there are other people involved of the evenings out there doing some Bible studies and things that who aren't connected to our church, but it's been really cool to be able to see that through that process. We've of course shared the gospel there multiple, almost every week we share the gospel with them, but we're meeting with the same cells every week, so it's allowed some ongoing discipleship. But we've seen a number of baptisms there at the jail. But then what's really cool is, I think like this past Sunday, the last few Sundays, we've had like 3 people who we baptized in the jail who are coming to church now.
Oh,
One of
wow.
those joined our church a few weeks ago, and he's plugged in and serving in a lot of ways. It's been super cool. So that kind of stuff to me is very rewarding. I was super nervous about it in the beginning,
Sure.
but it's
Yeah.
been one of the cooler ministries that I've ever done. And our staff is kind of the same way. We've got our staff involved in some ways, and some of the church members involved as well doing those studies. And it's just been really awesome to see God's work there, and just the light it's been to the community. It's been cool.
So, GJ, it looks like I mentioned that Beacon Hill's doing great. It looks like your attendance is well up over 300 probably on Sunday morning. I see that you all baptized 38 people last year, which is really strong. In fact, the church hasn't done that since back in 2012 was probably the last time that they baptized that many folks. You come from a ministry family. Your dad was a Kentucky Baptist evangelist. He was an illusionist, a Christian illusionist. Greg Farmer, well remembered. He passed away years ago. Can you share with us a little bit about your dad's influence on your life and ministry today?
Yeah. So how one of the things I remember most strongly about Dad is just how we would always talk about how he would share Jesus with, he'd share the gospel with, any person or anything that would listen to him, basically.
Yeah.
And there were days that when I was a kid, it would kind of be aggravating because,
Yeah.
we'd be sitting in the car waiting on Dad to leave church or to do something else or whatever, and he'd be talking. But now, looking back at it, his life and his legacy, that's one of the things that really means a lot. And I think the strongest memory, I won't say strongest, maybe most meaningful memory that I have of that is in hospice just a few days before he passed away. He had some different folks coming to visit him, and him sharing the gospel with people literally on his deathbed,
Yeah. Yeah.
making sure that they were ready. And I have a picture of him sharing the gospel with a little boy there while he was in
Yeah.
hospice, and that just means a lot. And so I think over the years, of course, him doing the gospel illusion shows and other things, and me being involved in that, that rubbed off on me in a lot of ways. I think
Mhm.
also, I worked with Dr. French Harmon
Mhm.
for many years, and people who know him know he's also very passionate about evangelism. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so those 2 guys being a huge influence on my life, that's what's made me so passionate about evangelism as well. And so it's been, those 2 guys have been a huge part of my life, but of course my dad the most. And appreciate you bringing up his memory. It's a
Oh, absolutely. So,
yeah.
I mean, your dad was well known and well loved, and to have a picture of someone like your dad living out the Christian life in front of you, and not realizing even at those moments how impactful that would be long term. That's just God's way. So, I know also French Harmon, as you mentioned, was another leadership influence in your life. Tell us something that you saw French model other than evangelism, which he did, that has impacted you and helped you be a more effective pastor.
I think one of the biggest things he always pushed us on, like in our staff meetings and just church in general, was leading with excellence and doing everything with excellence. He is almost, I don't use this word like in a negative sense at all, because, yeah, we're all in ministry, but he's very professional in what he does.
Mhm. No question.
And I think that has caused some big positive impacts on all the ministries that he's been in. And so just pushing me in that, pushing me in school. I know you read off all the schools that I've been to. He was a huge influence in that. He gave me a love and a passion for going to school, and uh, he was always pushing me to better myself and improve myself. So I appreciate that about him.
Well, God, all of that is the design of your heavenly Father. Obviously, the Lord put these people in your path. And let me mention one more. I know Stephen Rummage has been an influence on your life. You did D-Min work with Midwestern Seminary, and Dr. Rummage was part of your work there. He's a preaching model for you. He's now state executive director for the state of Florida. What's something that you've seen in Dr. Rummage's life that you hope to see emulated in your own, or something that's just influenced you positively?
Yeah, so I was already familiar in some ways with his preaching before I started going to Midwestern, and I'd watch some of his stuff online and different things like that. But after I took a preaching class with him, and he and I kind of jived pretty well as far as our preaching styles were very similar. I looked up to him. We had a mutual friend, and that he's got a book that he wrote, Engaging Exposition, with Danny Aiken and Dr. Bill Curtis. Bill Curtis was my pastor when I was in South Carolina for a while. So we had a mutual friend there. And so I just approached him about leading my dissertation committee, chairing that committee, and he agreed to do it. And so he and I talked through preaching quite a few times. And my dissertation was on sermon conclusions. So he helped me on that quite a bit. But just appreciate his impact just in general in my life. I know he's kind of, since that time, he's kind of moved on to doing some convention work in Florida and things now. And I know he's doing a great job there, but appreciate his impact on my life.
Well, God uses all those people to shape our lives. So, GJ, you've in your spare time, you've written a book called "Teach Us to Pray." So that's to be admired that you found the discipline to take the time to write a book. In your book, you're using Matthew 6 as a guide for effective prayer. And so, tell us about that book and why you wrote it.
Yeah, so this was actually in 2021. I was in the middle of my doctorate stuff. And for whatever reason, I just had a break in classes where the schedule didn't work out for me to have a class at that point. I had just finished a series on the Lord's Prayer, and I thought about how a lot of the study was very valuable to me because I had memorized the Lord's Prayer as a kid, as probably a lot of church going children have. And, I went to Christian school and things, and so we learned all of that. But there were parts of it in my study, even, 30 years or so after I had memorized it, that I never knew exactly what it meant when it said that. I thought I did. It seemed very clear, but when you study this from a perspective of like the original languages and other things, it really unlocked some key insights for me that I felt like were valuable. So basically, what I did was took all of my prep work for that series, wrote a book. Now, I think using the title book for this is a little bit generous. It's probably as thin as it could be to still be called a book. But I compiled it together because I'd always wanted to try to write something like that and put in some work, and then just did some self-publishing on
Yeah,
it in 2021. But yeah,
yeah.
the experience for me was invaluable, but also just putting that study down in a hard copy form was good too.
GJ, there's no such thing as a bad short sermon, and there's no such thing as, I mean, there might be some bad short books, but I happen to like smaller, more concise books. Do you think you'll write again? Do you think you'll write another book?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm open to it.
Yeah.
When I was self-publishing this, you had to choose to buy one ISBN or 10, and I went ahead and bought 10, thinking I would do something else later. I don't know that I have 10 books in me, but I would
You're
hope
young.
to write in this way too. So.
You're young. You have a lot of experience. All right. So let's talk about prayer. So the Lord, what does the Lord's Prayer teach us about how and why to pray?
Yeah, so I was thinking through this, just kind of some of the bigger points that I wanted to bring out. I think one of the things that is super important, super helpful, in fact, I recently shared this with my church, is it changes our perspective on prayer. First, when we look at that like opening line that Jesus gives, our Father, when we start viewing God as our Father rather than just some cosmic being or a genie or just the ultimate judge, those kind of things, which, there are parts of, like obviously God is the judge, but also there are different things that we think of God that may be partially true, but ultimately when we view him in light of being our father, we see the importance of the relationship, and the fact that we can go to God relationally, I think, is very important. It changes the game when we view God that way, because we begin to pour out our hearts to him. We can be more vulnerable, more honest.
Mhm.
But also, when we ask God for things, I think that it increases our faith when we know that our good Heavenly Father, who is perfect, all powerful, all of these things, has the ability to do the things that we're asking of him, but also he has the care and compassion where he wants to give whatever is good to us. And so I think it changes the game when we approach him in that way. Um, a few elements also of the Lord's Prayer that I thought were very insightful to me were when Jesus says, "Give us today our daily bread." Um, on the surface, it just appears like, hey, give us our food, or thank you for our food, much like we would say sometimes when we're praying for our food. But when you're looking at that particular phrase, really the idea is rooted a lot. Like if you look at the story of the Hebrews in the wilderness,
Yeah.
where God
Manna from
provided
heaven.
them just enough for them to have for that day.
Yeah.
And so it's a reminder of, yeah, let's ask God for supplying our needs, but trust Him to say, God, give me just what I need for today, because I'm going to come back tomorrow. And I know
Mhm.
you're going to be there tomorrow. I know you're going to take care of me tomorrow.
It's good.
And so it shows trust in the Lord. And then also one other thing I wanted to mention quickly, he says, "Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors." This phrase just sounds, kind of like, well, we forgave other people, so God, please forgive us. But this phrase, when you start to actually dig into it, could also mean, God, forgive me in the same way as I've forgiven other people.
Oh, yeah.
And if that's what we're asking of God, it's a good reminder for us, like almost like we can't expect God to forgive us unless we also are forgiving other people. And it's just a constant reminder that how we want God to forgive us, we should be forgiving others and extending that forgiveness and grace to other people.
Yeah, that's good. Those are great insights, and all of it is couched in the understanding that God is our Father. And those of us who are dads, I mean, I try really hard to be a good dad to my daughters. I fail at that. There's a speaker out there, a guy named Chip Dodd, who compares parenting to baseball. He says to be really successful in baseball, you only have to average about 300 or so in your batting. And he said parenting is about the same way. That if you're getting it right about a third of the time, then you're probably doing okay. But God's our Father, and He's a perfect Father, and we can trust Him. So, GJ, what are some things that maybe you've kind of discovered about prayer and church, or prayer and the individual believer, or your own prayer life where you've needed to grow or needed to help others grow? What else would you say to us about just about the prayer in the life of Christians or in the life of a church?
Yeah, I think one of the most common things for a lot of people is just to maybe have like a lull or like a valley, if you will, in their prayer life. And in some ways, that I've found that is because we get kind of in a repetitive rut with our
Mhm.
prayers, like we just say the same things over and over.
Yeah.
And there's part of it that you see God saying, like, or Jesus saying, ask, seek, and knock, like keep coming back to him and being
Mhm.
persistent in our prayers. And so I do think there's part of it that's good where we continually approach God with the same things. But if we're doing that just out of routine, um, it can become, in some ways, like our prayers are just like we're machines or something. And the
Yeah.
interesting thing is the Lord's Prayer, which we were talking about, Jesus gives us as the model. It was never written to recite, really, but
Mhm.
we, in a kind of our routine kind of thing that I'm talking about, we even have recited that. Now, I'm not saying that it's sinful to do
Sure.
that,
Sure. Right.
but the idea is that our prayer life should be fresh, and we should be just pouring out our hearts to the Lord and talking about the things that are current in our lives, and also just giving some thought to our prayers. I think
Yeah.
that's very important.
Yeah. Thanks. So have you read Don Whitney's book on praying the Psalms? Have you seen that? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, we've recommended that to our church, and actually, I was going to kind of mention that as well. Just praying the Bible by him. It's a great sort, like it's a small resource, but it's a great way to freshen up your prayer life. It's basically the idea of like using the Bible, some of the scriptures as prompts to
yeah.
bring out some different aspects of prayer.
Yeah, it was a game changer for me. And the sentence that he made in referencing all the struggle that you've just described about getting in a rut is that he said the reason we don't like to pray is because we keep saying the same old things about the same old things
Right.
and just keep repeating these things over and over and over. But praying the Psalms or praying through portions of Scripture can be so, as you said, prompting. So, GJ, any answered prayer that you've seen where you were praying about something and it's like any stories that you've seen in your church about prayer, where the church was praying about something that you could share with us?
Yeah. So, I'm thinking about this. Just going back to one of the big, of course, things that I was praying for, talking about coming to Beacon Hill, praying for, I mentioned kind of how I felt God was leading me
Yeah.
vision wise in ministry, and really what I felt called and compelled to do as a pastor. I was really praying that God would open the door and give me the opportunity to have a place to serve and to lead in the way that He had called me to serve. And I really felt like God answered that prayer in a lot of ways here, and that story keeps unfolding. But a couple of cool things that recently happened. We had we've got a couple, well, several new folks who have joined our church in very recent days. But folks, as they join, they're looking for opportunities to serve and connect and things. And we had been looking at our church, in our church staff, at how maybe our church could partner more with the community and things. And I had seen that there was going to be a homeless, they called it a homeless conference, but basically it was like to help with homelessness in the community. It's kind of like an
Hmm.
expo of the resources that were there and things. And we had talked about this amongst our staff. Well, I had a lady in my church approach me and say, I've really been praying about what I can do to connect with the homeless here in our community, and how to help. And I told her, hey, I just saw this like yesterday. And I
Yeah.
mentioned that to her. She's gotten connected with some different resources of folks she can help. She's a photographer, and so she wanted to tell some of those stories as well. And so, anyway, I thought, you know, prior to this, you and I had kind of talked about just looking at some small prayers that were
Hmm.
answered. That was one of the things. And something else was just kind of a small prayer that God just completely answered, and it was really cool. Was I had one of the ladies who is involved in our jail ministry. She told me recently, she was like, I just want to let you know how thankful I am for Beacon Hill and for the ministry there. I had been praying that God would lead me to a church that I could do jail ministry.
Oh, wow.
And it was one of those things that, like, she got connected to our church and really had no idea we were going to be doing this or anything like that. And it just kind of all fell together. And so it was really neat to see how God orchestrated that also. So I think, one of the things that's very important is when God answers prayers, or when things happen like this in our lives, that we don't like just chalk it up to coincidence
Right.
or
That's
chalk it
good.
up to fate or anything like that. We know that God's hand is behind everything that happens. He's
Yeah.
sovereign. He has providential care over everything. And so even these things that we would maybe see as small or trivial, God is working behind the scenes to make these things happen. And so as much as we pray about something, I think we also need to take time to acknowledge when God answers that prayer too.
It's great counsel, GJ. So none of us ever graduated from the School of Prayer. All of us are probably kindergartners when it comes to praying. There's so much more God's willing to do and connect us to through praying. GJ's resource would be a great resource for you. The Donald Whitney book is a great book. There's much that's been written about prayer. GJ, I want to shift gears just a little bit. So we're thinking about an effort this year called Pastoral Wellness. And the reason we're wanting to do that is because I know for a fact that pastoring today is more difficult than it ever was when I was pastoring for 20 years. And I know that many pastors feel like quitting the ministry. Many have quit the ministry just because of the stress and strain, the challenges of being part of a church family and trying to lead through that. And it's not always easy. Sometimes there are difficult personalities. There are many factors affecting pastors. What have you done personally, and what have you seen others do to take care of yourself while you're also taking care of the church, taking care of your family, and taking care of you? What are some practices in your life that help you maintain personal wellness?
Yeah, I think you could probably ask a lot of pastors, and all of us would probably say, okay, we're probably not doing as much as we should. But that being said, I think having those things in our lives are super important. So some of the things that I do, first of all, is I just like recently this past summer, picked up golfing kind of as a
Yeah,
hobby. It
yeah.
really, I don't go golfing too much, but honestly, the reason I started it is because we had several people in our church who golfed, and people would ask me to go golfing, and I would have to say I don't golf.
Yeah.
And so I started it in a way to be able to connect more with church members, but I found it to be a good stress relief as well, just being out there and kind of taking your
It's
mind
excellent.
off of things. So I think whether it's that or some other type of hobby, just something that you can kind of disconnect from in some ways. Of course, spending time with the family is super important. I have 5 kids, and that can be very busy and a lot going on at different times of year. We recently came out of a season where my daughters were in a children's play here in the community, and my son is playing middle school basketball, and so all of that going on at once. But just being able to see them do their thing and participate in that with them, I think is very important as well. And so just taking some time to disconnect. Also, there are times that I just turn my phone on silent and have to
Mhm.
disconnect in that
That's good.
way.
That's smart.
I think all of those things are important. Probably just knowing your own personality and what helps recharge your batteries. I think is vital. Everybody's a little bit different, but those are some of the things that I feel like help clear my head a little bit.
It's good counsel, GJ. And if you're a pastor out there, and if you're really struggling, you're past the point of just having a hard time, you're really deep in it, man, reach out to somebody, let somebody know what's going on in your life. You don't have to go through it alone. There are plenty of people that want to walk with you and talk with you as you're
And that's
battling some
that's
of the
something else I meant
difficulties.
to mention as well. I've got a friend that his name is Jonathan. I call him, almost daily, every other day sometimes, and we just talk about ministry stuff. He doesn't live around here, but we're both in ministry, and we're really good friends. We stay connected. I think that's very important to have somebody that you can just talk about stuff with as you
You
walk
want
through it.
Proverbs says if you want to have friends, you have to show yourself friendly. That means you have to reach out and intentionally put yourself in front of other people. GJ, last question. And so many of us learn best from mistakes, often from our own, sometimes from others. I have made more ministry mistakes probably than anybody, and more leadership mistakes. I can tell you about moving pews one time in a church without permission. I learned a lot from that experience. Have you made any leadership mistakes in ministry?
Yes, plenty.
Are there any that you want to talk about as we
Uh,
conclude our time?
I was thinking about a number of things similar to you mentioning the moving the pews. There are things like that I've did and didn't even think about. But I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made, especially early on in ministry, and even still, I kind of struggle with this in my own mind, is thinking that in ministry that you should or even can please everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that was a real driving force early on in my pastoral ministry, especially like being a senior pastor and things. I love church unity. And if we can bring the
Sure.
church together, I think that's super important. But there are some times in leadership that to make the right decision isn't always going to please everybody. And God has called us to please Him in our ministry, not to please people. Of course, we want to please people. We don't want to make enemies just to make enemies.
Right.
But at the same time, being a leader means that you make the tough decisions and do the things that that God's called you to do and that you know are best for His church. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I made, trying to please everybody. And I still want people to be happy, but at the
Sure.
same time, just realizing trying to lead the church the best way I can for the Lord is the most important thing.
GJ, I'm grateful for you. I'm really grateful for your ministry at Beacon Hill and watching from a distance what God is doing there and cheering you on when I see the Lord at work. I appreciate your friendship. There is a Beacon Hill podcast where you can listen to GJ and the staff, and those guys, they cut up and have a lot of fun and a big time together. But GJ, I feel sure of this. I feel sure that your dad would be very encouraged and proud of your life and what God's doing through you. Thank you for your ministry, your leadership. Thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Appreciate you, Dr. Gray. Thank you for your encouragement all the time and for your leadership as well.
You're welcome, brother. Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons. An audio podcast of this program is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. The Kentucky Baptist Convention was created by churches for churches to help churches reach Kentucky and the world for Christ. For more information about the KBC and the cooperative program, which fuels our ministry, go to kybaptist.org. We'll see you next time on Leadership